Mr. Lim Biow Chuan.
Mr. Speaker, as an MP, I receive frequent requests from residents asking the government to do more for them. Residents ask for financial help. They want lower transport fares. They appeal for more bus services to bring them to a specific destination. They ask for low-cost rental flats. They ask for blue CHAS cards, for higher healthcare subsidy, and they ask for less expensive medical treatment at clinics and hospitals, and the list goes on. For many of these requests, I'm sympathetic, as these residents are usually low income. Any reduction of costs or living expenses would be greatly welcomed by them. However, what some people don't remember is that it is not the government who just pays for the subsidies. The financial burden will be borne by other taxpayers. Not all residents understand that the government is a trustee of sort to manage the taxes paid by Singaporeans and Singapore companies. In doing so, the government has to be prudent in its spending and judiciously decide how to allocate scarce resources. Many of us have unlimited ones, but there are only so much resources available for distribution. Singapore has no natural resources. We have no oil reserves, no timber, forests, or coal, or natural minerals at our disposal. Almost everything has to be imported. But despite the lack of natural resources, Singapore has remained successful with good economic growth and has accumulated respectable financial reserves. And I attribute this to good government, as well as a hardworking and intelligent citizenship who have helped build Singapore to what it is today. Our budget theme for this year, Together a Better Future. In the budget statement, Finance Minister explained that the budget is a strategic and integrated plan. He asked Singaporeans to take a longer-term view and set out our strategic challenges clearly and plainly. He indicated that the government will spend more on healthcare by building more hospitals, polyclinics, nursing homes, and elder care centres. The government will also spend more on infrastructure projects like the rail network, construction of Terminal 5, Tuas Port, as well as the high-speed rail. And more will also be spent on education and security. These priorities of the government resonate with me. Indeed, healthcare is always a concern for many Singaporeans, as there will be more and more seniors as we live longer. Many elderly citizens whom I speak to worry about high healthcare costs, especially those who suffer from chronic diseases or have suffered stroke or require long-term medication for cancer. In my constituency walkabouts, I see more and more residents on wheelchair or needing help with their mobility. More spending on healthcare will make it affordable for those who need help in their retirement years. Having improved infrastructure will also allow better accessibility and convenience for many people and create a better environment for all Singaporeans. Lower transport fare is welcome because public transport is a necessity and public transport should be kept affordable. Increased in education spending is also welcome as it will prepare our children for the future challenges in the world. And increasing the financial support for students from lower income families will mitigate the gap between the well-off and students from the lower income families. With increased terrorist activities, security should also be an area of priority, and indeed, we should ensure that whatever we have today should be protected from those who wish Singapore to fail. However, the devil is always in the details. In allocating more resources to these areas of priorities, I urge the government to consider and to ensure that the lives of all Singaporeans would improve. I understand the need to take better care of the poor and needy and those with low income. But I urge the government not to forget the struggles and difficulties of the rising number of middle-class citizens who may feel sandwiched by government policies. They perceive some of the policies as not helping them. Hence, I urge the government to implement policies which would help those in need and at the same time be fair to citizens who have contributed to build Singapore. Thus, for incentives like S&C rebates or GST vouchers, please consider helping those who live in bigger flats but with lower income. Please do not just assess based on house type. Review the income ceiling for those who apply for CHAS card or those who should receive the silver support. Keep an eye on the retirees and the middle-income Singaporeans so that they too can share or enjoy the growth of the country. Schemes like the housing grants, proximity housing grants, and are good schemes that help the middle-income own HDB flats with large subsidies from the government for the purchase of the flats. The increase in GST was floated last year in November. And when the idea was floated, I said that there's always a political cost if you cannot persuade the ground that a hike in taxes is necessary. Nobody likes a tax increase as it takes away disposable income from the citizen and transfers it to the government to manage. The GST increase is planned for 2021 to 2025. Prime Minister previously said that in this current term of government, which ends, it has enough revenue. Thus, I'm glad that the GST increase is not taking effect next year or the year after. Instead, the government is giving 3 years advance notice that in order to maintain the spending on healthcare, security, and other social spending, they will need to raise revenue by increasing GST by 2%. In my view, it is fair and prudent to take a longer-term view of the needs of the country. It is not always possible to expect the government to keep increasing spending on healthcare, security, and other social spending without thinking of how to fund such spending. In particular, if the increase in GST would help reduce the healthcare burden on all citizens, if it helps subsidize transport costs, if it provides more care for the lower income, it should be something that we should all support as we are helping the majority of Singaporeans. For the lower income, middle income, and seniors, the Minister of Finance had committed to enhancing the permanent GST voucher scheme. And he has also committed to make a $2 billion top-up to the GST vouchers fund. And when the GST increase will be implemented, there will also be an offset package later. So with respect to Mr. Pritam Singh, I would not agree that GST in the Singapore context is regressive. In fact, I'm surprised at the Workers' Party reservation on GST increase, because if the Workers' Party agrees to increase social spending for healthcare, education, and security, where can the funds come from to pay for this recurrent expenditure? Mr. Heng has said, in the next decade between 2021 to 2030, if we do not take measures early, we will not have enough revenues to meet our growing needs. Thus, to me, it is clear the government is planning not just for a few years later, but for the next decade. For those who say that we should use the budget surplus last year to fund the increase in expenditure, I respectfully disagree, because it's fiscally unsustainable to rely on a surplus which is not a constant or a guaranteed source of revenue. Last year's surplus was an extraordinary gain, and Minister Heng had explained how the surplus came about. Details of the surplus were also published in the media yesterday. Surely, we cannot expect currency translation effects or increase in stamp duty to be always available in future budgets. For those who advocate that we use more than 50% of the expected net investment returns, or NIR, and keep less in the reserves, I would urge the government to be cautious. It is always easy to say, spend more today, save less for the future. What should be the right balance is a question that everyone has an opinion about. To me, we should exercise prudence and try to spend within our means, especially if our expenses are on recurrent spending on healthcare, security, and other social spending. We have been fortunate that our NIR has been increasing year after year. Last year was 14.61 billion, and this year the budget is 15.85 billion. Now, what if the NIR falls in the future years? Would we then say, take more from the NIR again? As for using proceeds from land sales, as suggested by Mr. Pritam Singh, I want to sound a word of caution. Now, once land is sold, the asset is gone. Now, if we were to use any part of the sales proceeds to fund recurrent expenses, does that mean that we are taking the monies away from the reserves? So I humbly submit that we should allow our reserves to grow in tandem with the economy. Before I conclude, allow me to seek a few clarifications from the Minister. In previous years, when GST was increased, a committee against profiteering, or CAP, was set up to combat any illegal profiteering due to GST increase. Would there be a similar committee set up before the GST increase is implemented? Secondly, Minister has said the government is looking at borrowing by statutory boards and government-owned companies which build infrastructure, and this would help spread the costs of certain large investments over more years. Can Minister clarify why is it necessary to borrow, considering our large reserves? Can we not rely on our other resources or borrow from our reserves and pay interest on those loans? With that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the budget.
Sir, clarification for member.
Ms. Civilian.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to clarify with member Lim Biow Chuan. He made a statement to say that once the land is sold by the government, it is gone. But does he not agree that actually the government's definition of land sales includes leases? And in fact, the cutoff period for when you include a lease as a sale is actually a 10-year lease. So it's not quite accurate to say that once the land is sold, it is gone.
Well, in reply to Ms. Lim, when a land is sold, whether it's on 99-year lease or otherwise, it is not sold in perpetuity. So the funds, once it goes back into reserves, would be gone for that period. For you to get back the land, you have to wait 99 years for it to come back.
Ms. Civilian.
Mr. Speaker, just a further clarification. I did file a parliamentary question to the Ministry of Finance to ask for the cutoff period for the definition of land sales under the budget, and the answer given to me was 10 years is the cutoff. So again, I would like the member to confirm that it's not accurate for him to say that once land is sold, it is gone.
I'm afraid I can't understand what Ms. Lim is asking. When you sell a land for 99 years, then the land sales, the proceeds of sale for that 99 years is gone. You're going to wait 99 years for the monies to come back before it goes back into reserves. Then you're spending funds that would be gone for 99 years. Yeah, and that's what you're spending for what? In this generation, you're spending money for the future generations.
So I think my point has been registered. Perhaps I'll wait for Minister for Finance to clarify.
Thank you.